So this wasn't really a video I expected to make, mainly because it's precisely the type of video I despise, but I felt compelled to. Basically, when it comes to any of the videos I make, I can always sort of tell which one I should be working on, and as I've been plugging away on some other stuff, writing scripts and compiling footage and whatnot, the thought for this video just kept kinda creeping into my head. So, like the last time the IRS finally tracked me down for my back taxes, I decided to stop fighting and just crank this one out, even if just to get it out of my system. If you hadn't heard the news, earlier this month, Sega announced that it would be removing a whole bunch of titles from digital marketplaces after December 6th, giving consumers about a month to buy them until they will no longer have the ability to do so. Now, I have a special place in my heart for Sega, namely because, as you know if you watched my Altered Beast video, my father's old Genesis was the first console I was allowed to keep in my room as a child. And perhaps fueled by that sense of nostalgia that I have, I feel the need to get myself up on a soapbox and say this very, very simply. This needs to stop. Games are typically removed from digital sellers for one of two reasons. Either there is a new, flashy remake being imminently released and the developers don't want the original to potentially cut into the sales of the new toy, or, much more commonly, there is a dispute over a licensing agreement between the seller, publisher, or some other entity that has a stake in the title that means it can no longer be legally sold unless one such dispute is resolved. Sega here has offered absolutely no information as to why these titles are being removed. The frequently asked question page about this removal says about as much as a redacted government document. Obviously, neither of these situations are good. Agreements causing the removal of games is just dumb, especially in today's world, and if you're making a new game that can't compete with the original in the marketplace, then your new game either sucks, your remake either sucks, or it was never needed in the first place. Like, it just, I don't understand why games are removed in either of those two situations, and those certainly aren't the only two situations, but those are what I would say are the primary two. But anyway, if I were so inclined to utilize the master's degree in communications that I am fortunate enough to possess, I would form a well-crafted, eloquently thought-out argument as to why this is a problem, ensuring that I cite research such as the recent ruling from the United States Copyright Office that denied libraries the ability to share out-of-print games online, or research from places like the Video Game History Foundation that found that nearly 90% of all games, as in ever, are currently unavailable to be acquired through some form of official means. Yes, I probably would do all of that. I do, however, have a bit more of a simplistic, if somewhat crass, reason for being so frustrated about this beyond the very real, tangible issues I just noted. Because it goddamn sucks for the player. Look, in 2024, we are all beholden to digital marketplaces, whether they be Steam, GOG, or whatever. That isn't going to change anytime soon, and probably shouldn't, because at their core, those platforms do wonders for letting people from all over the world have access to a wide variety of games. But for the love of Christ, we have to stop pretending that they are exactly like game stores of old. Like, games have always gone out of production. Publishers would only produce so many discs or cartridges before stopping. But after stopping, you could still find those games secondhand and pre-owned. When I was a kid, having not had a Nintendo 64 and finally wanting to play Ocarina of Time, you know what I did? I called around to my local game stores until I found one that had a collector's edition of Zelda for the GameCube and had my wonderful mother drive me over there so I could buy it. But in that context, with physical media, I could do that. After these games are removed from these digital platforms, once the individual keys for them have been exhausted through third-party hawking websites, that's it. There is no going out to find them. You know how frustrating it is to me that I'll likely never get the chance to make a video about something like Sword Coast Legends because it was removed from Steam eons ago, and if by some grace of God I were to find a key for it somewhere, that key would likely be so expensive at this point that I would in no way be able to afford it. And I don't mean to make this about me, because it isn't, because I primarily find this all frustrating for you, the viewer. A huge part of the reason that I make these videos at all is to talk about the histories and backgrounds of these games, because I find those aspects of video games wildly interesting. Of course, there's also the benefit of some preservation here on my tiny corner of the internet, but I don't just want to talk about cool games and their histories, I want you to be able to experience them. And the chronic delisting of games makes it that much more difficult, if not outright impossible in a lot of instances, for you to have that opportunity. In my old video for Altered Beast that I've already mentioned, I wrap it up by saying it's basically available everywhere. In a few more weeks, that unfortunately isn't going to be the case anymore. Like, this is sincerely the first time in any of my videos that I've ever been earnestly angry. This stuff truly infuriates me because there is no reason that it should be like this. As someone that enjoys collecting old tabletop modules and knowing how difficult it can be to find certain things at times, with the digital means available to us today, there is literally no reason that we should be putting ourselves into a position where our own ability to own old games comes down to third-party auctions and the maintenance of incredibly old gaming systems. It only makes games harder to find and more expensive for the average gamer. This is why emulation is so important, because for as much as certain companies will split themselves in half to try and stop people from doing it, they simultaneously have seemingly no interest in giving their fans an avenue through which to actually buy their products, meaning emulation a lot of times is the only way to preserve and play these games. For sake, a lot of official re-releases are just, you guessed it, emulations for modern systems. So these companies can do it when they decide they want to sell you something, but you aren't allowed to do it on your own time. And for those of you who love to do the dirty work of these same companies on this issue over the internet, gleefully preening that, actually, emulation is bad and illegal, I've just got this to say to you. This is the real world. Not Dungeons & Dragons, and your paladin-esque militant dedication to upholding the rule of law is not impressing anyone. Literally, the only way this issue gets addressed is by these same companies deciding to actually let their fans buy their stuff, and until they do, then you should steal and steal away. I think part of the reason that this got me so riled up is that the Sega Genesis collection that's being delisted is absolutely fantastic, to the point that I own it in various forms on 2 separate consoles. Altered Beast, Golden Axe, Echo the Dolphin, the Shinobi games, the Phantasy Star series, Shining Force, Sonic titles. It's a cornucopia of the absolute best that the Genesis had to offer. Not only should you want to own these games, but Sega should want you to as well. These games are integral parts of their history and can still unquestionably be relevant to people today, provided they're actually able to procure them. Something has to be done. I'm not entirely sure what the answer is, that's a bit beyond my scope, but this can't go on. It cannot be made so easy for publishers to pull the rug out from under players, to say nothing of the fact that there is no reason for this stuff to be happening. Go buy the Genesis collection, you won't regret it, but God, I hate that I feel like I even have to make a video like this.